All right, welcome back. We are going to start looking at les phals, see how they look here in January of 2023 before the growing season starts. I am not going to add any slow release fertilizer. I would normally do that at the beginning of spring. We are only going to fertilize with the K-Lite this year. No added fertilizer in there, so when they're getting a flush, they're getting a flush. There's going to not be any slow release fertilizer. Now, some of them, of course, the slow release fertilizer from the fall is probably still working, but as far as adding any fresh, we're not doing that. So the ladies that you see on the table currently all live on the top shelf. So we will chat about them. Then I'll turn the camera off again and I will talk about the ladies on the wall. So counted earlier, I have 83 or 84, depending on how you count the Phalaenopsis, because you know some of them are grouped together. Depending on how you count them, I have 84, 83 Phalaenopsis currently. So I will be doing these in a group of 10 to 15, 16, maybe 20, just to try to condense it all. Let me know in the comments below if you'd like me to do it in a smaller grouping, because I can do 8 videos of 10 to 12 or 6 with more in it. But this first one, we'll do these. I think there's 9 here. I think altogether today will be 16, but we'll do a quick look through. And let me know in the comments below how you'd like to see the future videos. All right, so I've got you set up on the tripod. Let me see if I can just kind of straighten it out just a little bit. Hoping you guys can see, because my little ring light that I normally use, well, somebody clumsily stepped on it, broke it. I have to order another one. Either way it goes. Let's start with Eeks. Okay, so this one here is a no ID Phalaenopsis. She has yellow leaves with a magenta lip. If I can find pictures of any of these guys, I will obviously post those for you. Some of these I've had for a while, and before I started doing YouTube, let me just move the camera up a little bit more, before I started doing YouTube, so I may or may not have kept the pictures. But currently she has been in this new setup since September of 2022, so recently repotted. It's just medium bark, the old bark I used to use, and perlite looks like, with some charcoal, but she has lots of active growing root tips currently. No new leaf growth as of yet, but she is starting to grow some more aerial roots here. So that is her status as of right now, just growing roots. No leaf, like I said, that I can see at the moment. And I got my little small table to kind of put them over here. And she does sit in a decorative pot with some pebbles at the bottom. Let me just move her over here. How's everybody's day going so far? All right, and then we have this one here. This one is the No ID Kaleidoscope that I got back in 2022 in May. She's been in this setup since August of 2022. She does not sit in a decorative pot. I see a root. I don't know if you can see that root. Where is it? You see the root poking out there. So she is doing some root growth. She is working on this leaf here. Now this was her last leaf, kind of a poor showing, but she is kind of settling in still into this setup here. So it'll be interesting to see what she does this season. She kind of looks a little sad, so if she really perks up and takes off, then we can really judge that. And when I'm done, I do plan to wipe everyone down, because at least once a month I like to wipe all the leaves down. They haven't had that in a while. So here we have my Cornucervi Chattel a Day. Here we go, the Cornucervi variation Chattel a Day. I've had her since August of 2021. She has been in this setup since October of 2022. And as you can see, she is rather dry. She also sits on that top shelf. But what I noticed when I pulled her down is her root tips are, I don't know if you can kind of see that, but they are kind of trying to come alive. And she has a leaf. I'll do a little close-up if I can remember, but she does have a leaf starting, so I'm going to be interested to see what she does. Now, also, they are pulled down so that I can water them today. Any that are doing any kind of growth, like she's got a leaf growing, the, which one was it? The yellow with the magenta lip, she's got active root tips. Any kind of active growth that I see, I will be giving them fertilizer. If there's nothing active going on, I'm not giving them any fertilizer. They'll just get a flush. Now we'll talk about her last. So we have Pink Lady here, which formerly known as Small Leaves. She got the name Pink Lady last year because she finally bloomed for me again. I've had her since 2019. She is due a repot. She has been in this pot since December of 2020. And I want to show you guys something. Do you see right here? These roots look like they're wet. I bet they're rotted because look how dry the rest of the pot is. And she always looks like, these roots always look like that. So she is a repot candidate. That's another thing I'll be doing as I go through the Phalaenopsis, is I'll make a list of those that need to be repotted. And then during our normal Friday Phalaenopsis series, we'll talk about that Phalaenopsis and do a repot, maybe more than one repot if it's like a no idea and there's not much we can say. Interestingly enough, we have a leaf. Can you see the leaf starting? Yep, we have leaf growth on that, so, and a new aerial root coming up, so she will definitely be getting some fertilizer. And their initial fertilizer, I'm only going to give them probably about 100 parts per million, okay? Again, of the K-Lite. We'll talk about these two next. So, these are both the lark songs, and this one here is due a repot because this bark is just falling apart. She's only been in here since August of 2021, so not quite 2 years, but this is some very inexpensive bark, and it's already breaking down. So she's not doing anything quite yet, but as soon as I see some growth on her, I'm going to repot her so that I can, because she's kind of not in there secure. And then look at her leaves. Like, she's the one that I think there's a problem with her. There's been theories that maybe she got wet and this is cell damage. It could be. I don't know. I'm going to wait and see what her next growth looks like. I kind of have a magnifying glass. I didn't see any bugs or anything. But for those of you who've ever had this, let me know what you think. If you think it's just cell damage from maybe too cold of water getting on her, or maybe I overwatered her and maybe it's a form of edema. That could be it. Don't know. But then we have a lovely lady here. This is the original lark song that I've had since 2020, February of 2020. And let's just admire her gorgeous blooms. Look at those. I cannot get more than 6 or 7 blooms on a spike, guys. So I'm hoping to get more in future. We'll just have to wait and see. She is also due a repot. Like I said, she has been in here since 2020. And it's old. It's tired. It needs to be replaced. And I'd like to put her in a non-holy pot so that she doesn't come out of her pot. I don't know. I haven't quite decided yet, but we have time because these blooms are going to last for a little bit, and she is such a reliable bloomer, guys. So she'll just get a flush of just pure water. She won't get any fertilizer or anything like that. I don't fertilize if they're in bloom, if they're not doing anything else. So if they're just in flower, I don't fertilize. But let's say she was in flower and actively growing roots and or leaves, then of course I give fertilizer. But if they're in bloom, I usually don't fertilize because to me, they've already expended the energy into the bloom. So whatever reserves they have left, let me know what you do. Do you continue fertilizing in bloom to continue getting the strength of the bloom, or do you stop fertilizing? And I don't use a bloom booster. I know some people that do, but I don't. Then we have Sunshine here. So Little Miss Sunshine, I love this. So do you see this root? So this root came out. It went back in through the orchid top, back up to the media. So again, for those people who, oh, they don't like the media, wait until we get a little further into some of the girls on the shelf. Wait till you see all the aerial roots and the roots in the pot. Some Phalaenopsis are just more prone to do aerial roots as well as roots in the pot than others. That's all. But she, other than the root tips that I see there, I don't see any new growth on her. She's not growing a new leaf or anything like that. Now, she's been in this setup since June of 2021. It looks okay. It doesn't look old and tired. We'll do a closer look on here. No, I think she'll be fine. Yeah, she's been here since June of 2021. And I don't keep her that wet, so I don't think it needs to be replaced. But again, I'll kind of do a check on it here once I get done and see. But no, it's pretty firm. This is the good Orchiata bark. So she should be fine in here for another year or so. What I might do, though, is maybe reposition with the stake and kind of bring her up a little bit because she is kind of leaning over. So I might do that. We'll have to wait and see once I get a little bit better positioned on what she's doing. I'll talk about her in a minute. And then we have Miss Morgan here. Miss Morgan has the most beautiful pink blooms. I've had her since 2021, May of 2021. She's never rebloomed for me. She keeps growing these beautiful leaves. Look at this. Love these. This is the largest one that she's grown. It's still kind of tender. She's just finishing this one off. I just want her to bloom again. I don't know why she won't. So maybe I might put her in that extra bedroom where it's a little bit cooler, maybe induce a spike. You know what? Let's do it. I'm going to set her in there, and she's not getting any fertilizer or anything. She's just going to get a nice little flush. And this is very small bark. It's still pretty good. So she is not in need of a repot. But I'm going to put her in that extra bedroom, see if we can cool her down a little bit, see if we can't just get a bloom out of her, because her blooms are just stunning, stunning. Then over here we have Miss Tadia Momoko. Let me see if I can, here we go. Here we are. Momoko, I think is how you would say that. So I've had this one since 2020, and this will be her first time reblooming for me. Look how she grew this year. Like she is just a hot mess. She just grew all over the place, and it got cut off, but I don't know where. I think it was her looking like a hot mess. Again, my fault. I kept moving the lighting, and that's why this leaf right here is kind of like all winky wanky, but I think it gives her some character. But this will be her first time blooming for me since I've got her back in 2020, and because she is in spike, I will give her fertilizer to help her produce the spike. So as opposed to Lark Song, who is already in spike, just getting water, she is working on her spike, so I will give her some of the K-Lite to help push her through. And we do have some active root tips down here because she definitely needs a repot this year. So we may repot her once she opens up her blooms. I'm a firm believer in it's okay to repot them once the blooms have opened. You more than likely will not lose the blooms while she is kind of budding out. I will not repot her because that will possibly cause those buds to blast. Now we have this no ID here. She is in a LECA setup. She has grown these two leaves since I put her in this setup back in 2022, so May of 2022. Not sure what she looks like. I don't remember, but she does have some active root tips, and it looks like, let's see if I can get the camera to come down just a wee bit, but can you see it? It looks like we may have, let's see, a spike right in there. So I'll get a close-up and kind of show you, but it looks like a spike, and then possibly we have a root coming down here. But she sits in just plain water. Now that I feel like there might be a root or a spike coming, I will add a little bit of fertilizer once she gets her flush. So I do flush all of mine that are in LECA at least once a week. All right, so let's talk about the ones that were hanging on the wall. And I'm going to talk about them and then put them back because I've just got too much going on. And I'll need the space later when I go to water. But first, let's talk about Equestris, cross back to self. So she is actually in a net basket with moss inside this, so I can hang her on the wall. But this moss is still damp, and I do keep it damp. I will water this just as it approaches dryness. But we have roots growing as well as a new leaf. So she did finish this leaf. Now she's working on this one here. Probably a couple of years off of blooming, and I'm okay with that as long as she continues with the vegetative growth. And because we do have roots and a new leaf, she will get some fertilizer. Now my species summer phals, I'm only going to fertilize them probably at about 50 parts per million right now because it's not the growing season. They're not really in full swing. Plus they don't need as much fertilizer as our hybrids, I don't believe. Again, correct me if I'm wrong, in my experience so far, that's what I found. Then we have the Fimbrata, who still has not bloomed. Matter of fact, this spike hasn't really grown much since I've gotten her. She has, however, developed this leaf right here, and it kind of was going in a weird direction. So I had to kind of prop it up next to this one to hold it up. And it did kind of have some tear spots, but now it's going the way it should. It is growing aerial roots, and now this one is potted directly into the basket that goes with the wall hanger. And as you can see, she's starting to grow her roots outside of, squeeze through. So she is actively growing. Again, she will get some fertilizer, not a lot. All of the species novelties that I have that are hanging on the wall are in all moss. Lightly packed. And let's talk about this one here. So this is the, and again guys, I always say this one wrong, the Lamlagira Wilson. Here, let me just show you real quick. So the Lamlagira Wilson, as you can see, is growing a new leaf. She has a nice new root coming in, and recently has dropped a leaf bud, but is working on another set right here. So she's doing well. Again, all moss. Because of the leaf and root growth, I will be giving that one some fertilizer. Then we have our Speciosa Red, who is in a pot, this pot here, inside this. So this one is in a bark and moss mixture. She's been in here since August of 2021 in this mix. And because I don't keep it super wet, and this is the New Zealand sphagnum moss, which I know you should change out your moss every 1 to 2 years. In my environment, because I don't keep it wet all the time, I have been able to stretch out my sphagnum to about 2.5 to 3 years, especially if it's mixed in with the bark. So I did check it recently, and the bark is still nice and firm. Let's see, just pull it out. Let me pull out a big enough piece where I can kind of show you. Like this is a little small piece, and it is still really nice and firm. So no need to change and repot her and disturb her if not needed. But she is starting a new leaf already for the season. So we will be giving her a little splash of fertilizer as well. And she hangs on the wall there. And she's hung on that wall since I've gotten her. Maybe not in that same exact spot. She's been moved around, but always on that side of the grow shelf. And then we have a Bellina that, again, is potted inside of a pot that is, and it's getting harder and harder for me to pull her out because look at the juicy leaf. So she came with these, okay? She grew this leaf here, and this is the latest leaf, so it's even bigger than the last. She must be enjoying this primary bark moss mixture. Again, I will water just as the media is drying out, and because she is still working on this leaf, she will get a splash of fertilizer as well as active root tips, meaning she is growing some roots. And all of these guys have rock at the bottom so that any kind of drainage, it kind of creates extra humidity in this immediate area of the plant. So that is those. Let me get the other girls down here. All right, now the last two that hang up there are Spots. okay, which is in need of a repot. So she has been in here since 2020, so well, December of 2020, so 2 years. And this is just some old, this is reptile bark, so I do need to replace it. It is getting old and tired. Look at all the active root tips that we have in here. And then, of course, her aerial roots. These are the 2 leaves that she has grown last year. And as we can see, she is in active spiking. Let's see if we can turn it. But her buds are starting to separate, so she will still get a little bit of fertilizer to help her open those blooms. Once those blooms open, then I will probably just cut back on giving her fertilizer unless she starts. She's one that can start a new leaf while she is in spike. She's an overachiever. Then we have the DTPS Winter Clouds Mendenhall. At least that's what she was sold to me as. I'm kind of questioning that. Who is working on this leaf right here? So last year she grew, I believe, just 1 leaf, maybe 2, but I know for sure this one, and then now this one. So her leaves should be the big fat ones. She's struggled, guys. She's struggled. So I've had her since 2019, I believe May of 2019, and I didn't take good care of her, but look at her active root tips in here right now. And she's been in this setup since August of 2022, so we don't need to disturb her. This is pretty quality bark that I got from Nick's nursery, and it's not the reptile, the cheap bark. So we will leave her in here, and because she is growing that leaf, and of course active root tips, she will also get some fertilizer. And she just hangs right down here underneath Miss Spots. And there we go. Now, again, not adding any slow release fertilizer to any of the phals this year because I want to see if the K-Lite makes a difference. Secondly, and probably most importantly, I'm going to only flush the fertilizer through because according to the directions, because I like to soak my girls sometimes, but according to this, it says application recommendation: using pure water and flooding the container each time, apply a total of 75 to 125 ppm weekly. And then it says half that if you're feeding twice a week, double that if you're feeding every 2 weeks. So since I will be feeding probably every 5 to 7 days once the growing season really starts and these girls kick on, I may just go with 100 parts per million for the entire season. Haven't quite decided on that yet, but there will be no soaking. Everything will just, I'll be flooding them. So because that is what is recommended, and we're going to try to use it according to the recommendations. I've even written myself a note on the top here, 2023 phals only. Again, let me know down below if you'd like to see them in a large grouping like this, or would you prefer to do them in a smaller grouping, maybe 10 or 12? And on top of that, do you want to do it every 3 months or every 4 months? Leave that below. I'll be looking for your comments, and I'll see you later.